Designer to the stars, Gianni Versace gunned down on the steps of his lavish South Beach home.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the most shocking crimes of the 1990s.
The FBI is investigating Tanya Harding's husband in the attack on Nancy Kerrigan. Oh my God.
The North Hollywood shootout.
He saw a police car in the intersection at Laurel Canyon and Archwood. There was Sergeant Dean Haynes and a few civilians.
February 28, 1997. Gunfire erupts across the streets of Los Angeles, sending people fleeing into homes, cars, anywhere protected they can find. It's not the famous scene from Heat, it's the North Hollywood shootout, when bank robbers Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Mataseranu fled a Bank of America and engaged in battle with the responding police officers. The two had the weaponry of a small army and were even outfitted in homemade body armor, making incapacitation virtually impossible. But the police and SWAT found a way, with some even going to a local gun shop to purchase high-powered rifles. After 45 minutes of shooting, both robbers were killed. 20 people were injured, and nearly 2,000 rounds of ammo littered the streets of LA. The killing of James Byrd Jr.
We learned that there was a great deal of prejudice in our community that we kind of swept under the rug.
Referred to by many as a modern-day lynching, the murder of James Byrd Jr. shocked the nation in the summer of 1998. Byrd, a black accounting executive, accepted a ride from three white men in a pickup truck: John King, Lawrence Brewer, and Sean Berry. The three men took Byrd to a remote area, assaulted him, and chained him to the truck. They then dragged Byrd for 3 miles, resulting in his horrific death. Aside from nationwide outrage, the crime resulted in the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which was put into law by Barack Obama in 2009. Berry was sentenced to life in prison for murdering Byrd, and both King and Brewer were executed by the state of Texas.
All three were convicted. One received life in prison, Sean Berry, but the other two received death sentences. And Russell Brewer has already been executed, but tonight the convicted ringleader, John William King, is set to die by lethal injection.
Mary Kay Letourneau.
Even now, some 2 decades later, you can't help but ask, what was she thinking?
By the mid-1990s, Mary Kay Letourneau was teaching at Washington's Shorewood Elementary School. It's here that she met a Samoan student named Vili Fulau. Letourneau was drawn to Fulau, taking a particular interest in the child's artistic abilities. Before long, he was going over to Letourneau's house to study, and the two began a relationship. However, it was around this time that Letourneau's husband found love letters written to Fulau, and the police were contacted, resulting in Letourneau's arrest. She spent 6 years in prison, but she went on to marry Fulau after her release, and the two stayed together until 2019. Letourneau died of cancer the following year and left much of her estate to her ex-partner and ex-student.
So I ended up taking the bet and pursued Mary.
Isn't it incredible? It's just incredible to think that what started as a bit of showing off and following through on a dare or a bet has led to, where we are now.
The Port Arthur Massacre.
Good evening. A siege is underway in the Tasmanian town of Port Arthur, where at least 25 people have been shot dead in Australia's worst massacre.
Martin Bryant snapped on the morning of April 28, 1996. Some years earlier, Bryant's father attempted to purchase a bed and breakfast called Seascape in Port Arthur, Tasmania, but he was beaten to the deal by couple David and Sally Martin. Around noon on April 28th, Bryant murdered both of the Martins at Seascape and proceeded to embark on an enormous massacre across the greater Port Arthur site. Equipped with 2 semi-automatic rifles, Bryant shot over 50 people, killing 35 of them and leaving the rest horribly injured. Following a standoff with the police that lasted over 18 hours, Bryant was arrested and given 35 life sentences, 1 for each victim.
The man believed responsible for Australia's worst mass murder this century is sedated and under police guard in a hospital. Police say they expect to talk to him later this morning when charges can be laid.
The murder of Brandon Teena.
Do you think that you will be executed?
Well, there was a time I'd say no, but, I don't know.
You may know the story of Brandon Teena from the 1999 film Boys Don't Cry, for which Hilary Swank won the Academy Award. Teena was a transgender man in 1990s Nebraska, and he faced hostility from some members of his conservative community. He earned the particular ire of ex-convicts John Lauder and Tom Neeson. On the morning of December 31st, 1993, Lauder and Neeson broke into the home of Lisa Lambert, with whom Teena had been staying. Here, they murdered Teena, Lambert, and a mutual friend, Philip Devine. The case attracted widespread outrage and underscored the lack of legal protections for transgender individuals at the time, which in turn helped lead to legal and cultural reform.
When 48th Street opens in full, thousands of people will see this mural every single day. It's the first of its kind honoring Brandon Teena, and it's loud and proud at a time when trans issues are increasingly in the national and state spotlight.
Gary Ray Bowles.
Sad to say, but it's not hard to kill somebody. You can kill somebody pretty easy if you have the mindset for it.
Perhaps better known as the I-95 killer, Gary Ray Bowles was active throughout much of 1994. His first known murder occurred on March 15th, when he strangled a man named John Roberts in Daytona Beach. Over the next 8 months, Bowles would travel the country selling his body, strangling the men who picked him up, and stealing their credit cards. By the end of November, he had murdered at least 6 people and had even found himself on the FBI's most wanted list. In court, it was ruled that Bowles was motivated by a need for money and homophobia, reportedly hating gay men and wishing for them to die. He was sentenced to death and executed on August 22, 2019.
Scheduled today at 6 p.m. in accordance with Florida law, the department will carry out the sentence of the court in the state of Florida versus Gary Ray Bowles.
The City Bonds robbery.
Is it your first time being around? You're doing great. Just smile, Loretta, so you don't look like you're being held up.
One of the largest bank robberies in history occurred on May 2, 1990. But this wasn't just a simple bank robbery. Instead, it was an enormous undertaking orchestrated by the combined efforts of the IRA, Colombian drug lords, and the New York Mafia. A courier named John Goddard was mugged at knife point in London's Nicholas Lane while carrying 301 certificates of deposit and various treasury bills. The stolen bonds were laundered through various criminal channels and totaled an astounding £292 million, about £850 million today. However, the heist turned out to be a monumental failure. All but 2 of the certificates were recovered, countless criminals were arrested, and some were even murdered, including Patrick Thomas, the man who carried out the mugging.
You sit there with a mass murderer. A mass murderer. Your heart rate is jacked. Your hand? Steady.
Thurston.
Stacy Compton knows just how real it was.
Lying on the floor, there's blood all over the floor, everything. It was like a pool of blood I was standing in it.
The late 1990s saw a spat of school shootings, including Thurston in 1998. Perpetrator Kipland Kinkle was losing his grip on reality, hearing voices and developing an obsession with death. He later admitted to keeping a handgun in his locker, resulting in an immediate suspension. Following a lecture by his father, Kinkle shot and murdered both of his parents with a semi-automatic rifle. The following day, he went to the high school and opened fire in the cafeteria, killing 2 students and injuring 25 others. Several students, including the injured Jacob Riker, heroically captured and subdued Kinkle until police arrived, and he was sentenced to 111 years in prison. Kinkle was later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but his sentence remains unchanged.
Here now in Springfield, traffic is very heavy tonight. Traffic both of cars driving back and forth on the road in front of the school, trying to figure out exactly why this happened here, and traffic of students, friends, and family who are slowly building an impromptu memorial.
Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo.
So for the first time, you actually saw Homolka and heard her in that voice, that little girl voice. And she, I think, completely exposed who she was.
What is arguably the most notorious crime in modern Canadian history occurred between December 1990 and April 1992. Married couple Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo murdered 3 girls in that time span, beginning with Karla's younger sister Tammy on Christmas Eve 1990. Homolka drugged her sister with sedatives, and she then died after aspirating on her own vomit. Homolka later claimed that she was coerced by Bernardo, but evidence suggests that she was a willing participant. The 2 then proceeded to kidnap and murder both Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. Following their arrest, Homolka struck a very controversial plea deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify against Bernardo in exchange for a reduced sentence. Homolka was sentenced to 12 years and Bernardo to life.
She was released from prison in 2005.
Since then, she's kept a low profile, going by the name Leanne Teal. And for the past 2 years, she has reportedly lived in this suburb south of Montreal with her husband and their 3 children.
Eileen Warnos.
Those men were shot just shot in self-defense, boom, boom, boom. You know, they weren't cut up, they weren't sliced up, no OJ jazz, you know. And he said, I did the most horrendous crime in the whole wide world.
Not true?
I guess not. All they were was shot and left.
One of the most famous serial killers in American history, Eileen Warnos murdered 7 men in Florida while engaging in sex work. 6 of those 7 murders were committed between the months of May and November of 1990. Warnos claimed that she shot the men in self-defense after they attacked her, but this argument did not hold up to scrutiny, and most believe that she killed the men in order to rob them. Warnos was later arrested following a tip and became increasingly unstable during her time in prison, often blaming others for her crime and engaging in nonsensical rants. She was ultimately executed on October 9, 2002, at the age of 46.
It was hoped Eileen would confess all to a priest before execution, but she remained angry and defiant to the very end. Eileen sent the priest packing and then knelt down and prayed for her victims, believing they might be too evil to be accepted by God.
Kidnapping of Jaycee Lee Dugard. In the summer of 1991, the young Jaycee Lee Dugard disappeared in Myers, California on her way to the school bus stop.
She reaches the road. A gray car pulls up. A stranger rolls down the window.
And his hand shoots out, and I just feel numb.
Witnesses, including Dugard's stepfather Carl Probin, saw a man and woman force her into a gray vehicle, and the perpetrators were later identified as Philip Garrido and his wife Nancy. For 18 years, Dugard was held in a shack behind their home in Antioch, where she gave birth to 2 girls. The story was featured on America's Most Wanted within days of the abduction. Dugard and her daughters were finally found in 2009 after Philip was ordered to attend a parole meeting.
It wasn't until 2 suspicious campus police officers uncovered the truth that Jaycee was reunited with her mother after 18 torturous years.
They're like, you can see your mom, and I'm like, I can see my mom?
In 2011, he received a 431-year to life prison sentence, while Nancy was sentenced to 36 to life. The murder of Phil Hartman. Actor-comedian Phil Hartman was a cast member of Saturday Night Live from 1986 to 1994, earning an Emmy in 1989 for writing.
Fine, but please, don't tell Mrs. Clinton. Jim, let me tell you something. There's going to be a whole bunch of things we don't tell Mrs. Clinton. Fast food is the least of our worries, okay, buddy?
Hartman married his 3rd wife, Bryn Omdahl, in 1987, and the couple had 2 children together. Omdahl struggled with multiple substance use disorders for years, which put a strain on their marriage. She also reportedly had anger issues, leading to many fights between the couple, including one on the night of May 27, 1998. In the early hours of May 28th, she shot Hartman multiple times in his sleep, then confessed to 2 friends before taking her own life.
Distraught neighbors and friends of the couple say they had marital problems. One woman said she had feared that this would happen.
Hartman's murder shocked the entertainment industry at large. Family, friends, and fans continue paying tribute to the comedian. John and Lorena Bobbitt. Less than a week after their 4-year anniversary, John and Lorena Bobbitt made headlines for a shocking reason. According to Lorena, her husband assaulted her the night of June 23, 1993 in their Manassas, Virginia home. When he was asleep, she took a knife from the kitchen and removed his manhood, so to speak.
She went into the kitchen to get a glass of water, and she saw the knife.
It was so many things coming into my mind. I don't know how to describe.
Lorena alleged that John was emotionally and physically abusive. She was found not guilty due to insanity and irresistible impulse. In years since, John has been arrested and charged for several alleged instances of battery involving wives and girlfriends. He and Lorena continue to talk to the media about the incident.
How quickly did you know that what happened that night was going to be a very big story?
No, I knew it was big because they were trying to, keep the reporters from coming up to the hospital.
The shooting of Mary Jo Buttafuoco. In 1991, 35-year-old auto body shop owner Joey Buttafuoco allegedly began an affair with teenager Amy Fisher. When she approached his wife Mary Jo on May 19, 1992, a heated confrontation led to Fisher shooting her in the face and fleeing the scene.
She is accused of an affair with a married man more than twice her age. She is in jail on charges of trying to kill his wife. But who is Amy Fisher?
Mary Jo survived and was able to help officials identify the young woman who shot her. Fisher, whom the press dubbed the Long Island Lolita, was arrested and charged. Meanwhile, Mary Jo suffered partial face paralysis and lost hearing in one ear. In December 1992, Fisher was sentenced to 5 to 15 years, serving 7 before being paroled in 1999.
It's not about me anymore. It's not about the person who got shot and assassinated on the front of her own home. It becomes about Joey and Amy.
And it did. It took on a life of its own, because that's what the public was seeing. That's what they wanted.
The West Memphis Three. In May of 1993, 3 young boys from West Memphis, Arkansas were found murdered in Robin Hood Hills. Due to the shocking nature, officials speculated there was evidence of an occult ritual. 18-year-old Damian Eccles, known for his interest in Wicca, was later arrested along with his friend Jason Baldwin and acquaintance Jesse Miskelly Jr. Despite a lack of evidence, Baldwin and Miskelly got life sentences, while Eccles was sentenced to death.
They argue that the boys' predilections, along with the strange and brutal nature of the crime scene, are proof that the murders were committed as a satanic ritual.
Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky directed 3 HBO documentaries beginning with trial coverage. The case gained attention when Metallica allowed their music to be used in the first film, and high-profile celebrities like Johnny Depp publicly supported the boys' innocence. In 2011, the West Memphis Three were released after agreeing to an Alford plea.
Today, the West Memphis Three walked free.
It's been an absolute living hell.
The attack on Nancy Kerrigan. On January 6, 1994, figure skater Nancy Kerrigan was practicing for the United States Figure Skating Championships in Detroit, Michigan, when she was suddenly struck in her right leg with a baton.
Kerrigan was clubbed on the right knee with a baton by an unidentified man.
Why?
The whack heard round the world, as it came to be known.
Rival skater Tanya Harding and her ex-husband Jeff Gillooly were suspected of orchestrating the attack to eliminate Harding's competition. The attacker was later identified as Shane Stant, an associate of Sean Eckert, who acted as Harding's bodyguard and Gillooly's friend. Stant and his getaway driver Derek Smith accepted plea deals and were both convicted of conspiracy, while Eckert and Gillooly pled guilty to racketeering.
Just 3 weeks after the attack, her ex-husband, Jeff Gillooly, pleads guilty, but accuses Tanya of being the mastermind.
Tanya categorically denies those allegations.
You know, I haven't done anything wrong.
Harding was banned from the USFSA and didn't skate professionally again. In 2017, interest in the infamous attack was renewed with the release of the film I, Tonya. The murder of Matthew Shepard. In October of 1998, 21-year-old University of Wyoming student Matthew Shepard was robbed and brutally attacked by 2 men, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson, who left him for dead. Shepard succumbed to his severe head injuries 6 days later in the hospital.
The tragedy would become one of the most notorious anti-gay hate crimes in American history.
You need some preaching, my friend.
Matt's funeral and the murder trials, which led to multiple life sentences, dominated the media.
In December, Shepard's parents founded the Matthew Shepard Foundation. In 1999, Henderson received 2 life sentences after pleading guilty to murder and kidnapping charges and testifying against McKinney, who got the same sentences. While McKinney and Henderson maintained that they didn't target Shepard because he was gay, the case sparked discussions surrounding hate crimes against the LGBTQ+ community.
You know, I just saw this very bright, intellectual, worldly young person. It's one of the mysteries that keeps you going. I can't ever really know what he might have been able to accomplish, but I have a pretty good idea of what we can accomplish in his name if we keep doing it. And so we do.
In October 2009, then-President Barack Obama signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act into law. The assassination of Gianni Versace. After Giovanni Versace opened his first boutique in 1978, the Italian fashion designer quickly made a name for himself in the industry.
I have a beautiful house, I have a beautiful life, but that is the media. What I desire is more.
His life was cut short at 50 years old when Andrew Cunanan shot him in front of his Miami Beach home on July 15, 1997. 8 days later, Cunanan took his own life. The cross-country spree killer had previously killed 4 other men before Versace, including his friend Jeffrey Trail in Minneapolis and well-known real estate developer Lee Miglin in Chicago.
Andrew Cunanan makes the top 10 FBI list. You had people in all parts of the country wondering whether Andrew Cunanan was going to show up at their house.
Authorities admit that by now, Cunanan could be anywhere.
While his exact motivations are ultimately unknown, experts speculate Cunanan was jealous of Versace's fame and fortune. In 2018, the second season of American Crime Story revisited the crime and the aftermath. The death of James Bulger. One of the most shocking criminal cases in British history took place on February 12, 1993, when 2 of the country's youngest offenders took the life of the even younger James Bulger.
After all this time, 17 years, there's no doubt in your mind that it wasn't just a prank gone wrong, it was evil.
Yes, there's no doubt in my mind at all. It was complete evil intent.
The now widely viewed CCTV footage shows Robert Thompson and John Venables leading Bulger out of the New Strand shopping center. Days after the boys' unspeakable acts, Bulger's body was found in Walton, Liverpool. Professionals determined Thompson and Venables knew right from wrong despite their young ages. In November that year, they were found guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. In 2001, both were released from youth detention centers at the age of 18 and given new identities.
They got no punishment whatsoever. They got rewarded for murdering James. That's why I've never let it go and I won't let it go.
You think they were rewarded?
Of course it was a reward because they never spent no time in a prison.
Venables returned to prison on several occasions for possession of explicit material involving minors. The Rodney King beating. While driving home with friends on the morning of March 3, 1991, Rodney King was allegedly speeding on the highway and refused to stop for police, and a high-speed chase ensued. They were eventually pulled over by 5 officers from the Los Angeles Police Department. George Holliday, a nearby witness, filmed the officers tasing King, repeatedly striking him with batons and kicking him.
Rodney King struggled in many ways for the rest of his life.
He would have nightmares. I mean, you could hear him yelling in his sleep, kind of moaning, like he was literally having a nightmare.
According to officers, he resisted arrest, though King and witnesses denied this. The footage was sent to a local news station and ignited widespread criticism of the LAPD and law enforcement's excessive force. After the 4 officers avoided conviction in 1992, public outrage in the African-American community led to the 6-day Los Angeles riots.
Well, my reaction is shock first and then disappointment. Obviously, we feel the evidence warranted a conviction on the defendants, and the jury disagreed with us, and we must abide by their decision.
The death of JonBen&e Ramsey. On December 26, 1996, the young JonBen&e Ramsey went missing from her home in Boulder, Colorado. Her parents, John and Patsy, allegedly found a ransom note demanding a suspiciously specific amount of money.
The note demands $118,000 and threatens the immediate execution of their daughter.
Just hours after she was reported missing, John found his daughter's lifeless body in the basement. Her death was ruled a homicide.
And lo and behold, when John Ramsey finds the body, you now have John Ramsey at the crime scene.
Documentaries and TV programs still revisit the case, analyzing the evidence, going over statements, and uncovering secrets surrounding the family members. The persisting mystery of her death will seemingly always captivate the nation. Despite many ongoing theories and suspects, the case remains unsolved to this day.
I believe there is some evidence to suggest strongly that he may have come in through a basement window.
The Centennial Olympic Park tragedy. In 1996, Atlanta, Georgia hosted the Summer Olympics. Security guard Richard Jewell discovered what appeared to be a pipe bomb under a bench in the park. He immediately called the police and helped lead people to safety before the blast. The bombing resulted in 1 death and 100 injuries.
He was hailed a hero.
And I just hope that we catch the people that did it.
Jewell was labeled a hero, but then quickly became the FBI's main suspect. For almost 3 months, the FBI investigation and the media attention ruined his life.
Some of the coverage, while acknowledging that Jewell was only under investigation, still cast him in the worst possible light.
His name was eventually cleared, but the real bomber, Eric Rudolph, wasn't caught until 2013. Jewell was the subject of a Clint Eastwood film, as well as Season 2 of Discovery Channel's anthology series Manhunt.
Until the day I die, there will be people who believe that I'm a murderer.
The murders of Tupac and Biggie Smalls. In the late 90s, two of hip-hop's most influential artists were killed within 6 months of each other.
Backseat of the Cadillac, unrolled the window, arm came out, opened fire, and just went rat-a-tat-tat. There were 13 shots fired.
On September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur was gunned down, dying 6 days later. Then, on March 9th, 1997, Biggie Smalls, also known as the Notorious B.I.G., a suspect in Tupac's murder, was shot and killed.
911 emergency, what are you reporting? We're on Fairfax and Wilshire. We're man shot in our car right now.
The two started off as friends, but quickly became enemies in the East Coast-West Coast War. Suspects range from former Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight to corrupt officers in the LAPD. New theories still arise today from lifelong fans hoping to solve the murders of two young rappers at the height of their careers.
You don't know who's with who, how it's gonna go down.
The World Trade Center bombing. 8 years before the September 11th attacks, the World Trade Center was hit with a bomb. On the afternoon of February 26, 1993, a bomb went off inside a rental van, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000. The van was located in the underground parking garage.
At 12:18 p.m., World Trade Center Tower number 1 became a tower of smoke.
Shockingly, one of the men who planted the bomb actually went to the rental agency to get his security deposit back. Not so shockingly, he was brought in by the FBI. Mohammed Salama and his 3 accomplices were arrested and later convicted.
Yesterday, federal agents raided Salama's apartment, where they found the evidence that led to his arrest.
The granite memorial fountain built to honor the victims was destroyed in 2001, but the names of the victims are included in the North Pool of the 9/11 Memorial.
93 bombing was the powder keg. It was the start of America being vulnerable.
The murder of Selena Quintanilla Perez. Selena Quintanilla Perez was just 23 years old when she was killed by her fan club president and friend Yolanda Saldívar on March 31, 1995.
Selena has been shot dead at a Corpus Christi motel.
Yolanda was caught embezzling the singer's money, and Selena confronted her at a motel to collect tax papers. Rather than face the consequences of her crimes, Yolanda fatally shot her supposedly best friend.
It's not like we thought that this person was possible of the act that she committed.
Given Selena's bright and bubbly presence that touched so many, her sudden death is still a shocking reality. It's impossible to listen to Dreaming of You and not cry thinking of the heartbreaking ending of the 1997 film. Love for the iconic singer was revitalized with Netflix's Selena the series. The crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer. He's sometimes called the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster, but everyone knows the name Dahmer. From 1978 to 1991, he killed 17 young men, doing unspeakable things to their remains.
Jeffrey Dahmer was responsible for killing more than a dozen people.
The killer was finally caught on July 22, 1991, after an intended victim escaped and flagged down police. A lot of media attention has focused on his upbringing, attempting to explain why anyone would commit such horrific crimes.
Milwaukee newspaper is reporting the man has confessed to killing at least 11 people.
What makes him enduringly fascinating is just how normal he looked. Ryan Murphy's Netflix original series starring Evan Peters is based on Dahmer's life, but told through the eyes of his victims. The Waco Siege. Beginning February 28, 1993, the FBI led a siege against David Koresh, leader of the Branch Davidians, and his cult followers. Suspecting that the group was stockpiling illegal weapons, ATF agents had arrived at Mount Carmel Center outside Waco, Texas, to serve a warrant. Instead, a deadly gunfight ensued, resulting in the deaths of 4 agents and 6 Branch Davidians.
Even when the agents all left, we felt that they would be back that night and kill us.
The siege continued for 51 days, finally ending April 19th, when the FBI flooded the building with tear gas, attempting to force everyone out.
This is not an assault. We are not entering the building.
A fire consumed the building, and by the end, 76 Branch Davidians were dead. Official reports alleged that cult members lit the fires, while surviving cult members blamed the FBI.
Huge numbers of Americans watched this play out on their television sets, and the ending was incredibly horrifying.
The Oklahoma City attack. 2 years to the day after the Waco siege, a bomb went off under the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City.
A massive car bomb exploded outside of a large federal building in downtown Oklahoma City, shattering that building.
The bombing killed at least 168 people, including 19 children, wounding over 680 others. The 9-story building contained offices of 14 federal agencies. Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, 2 soldiers turned anti-government extremists, targeted this location because it housed the DEA and ATF, 2 of the 3 agencies they sought to attack. McVeigh was sentenced to death for this act of domestic terrorism, one of the worst in U.S. history.
It was an act of cowardice, and it was evil.
The Columbine High School massacre. When you say Columbine, everyone knows what you're referring to. Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado became front-page news on April 20th, 1999, after 2 heavily armed students killed 13 and wounded over 20 others before taking their own lives.
Just Sheriff's Office, do you have an emergency? Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
This wasn't the first school shooting in the U.S. There had been a string of others around the country, but at the time, it was the deadliest in U.S. history. This infamous attack forever changed how security and safety protocols are handled in schools. Victims of the shooting suffer lasting trauma, some continuing to speak about their experience in the hopes of preventing more tragedies.
It's good that school shootings are still shocking because it shows that they're really rare.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. The murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. On June 13, 1994, the bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were found in front of her Brentwood home, having been stabbed to death the night before.
She was absolutely terrified for her life.
Nicole's ex-husband, former football star O.J. Simpson, became the #1 suspect. The trial, dubbed the Trial of the Century, began 7 months after the murders on January 24, 1995, and would last 134 days, with the shocking verdict being announced on October 3rd.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187.
In the media, it's often forgotten that it isn't all about Simpson. The families of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman lost their loved ones. The infamous Bronco chase, trying on the gloves, the theatrics in and out of court, all distract from the reality of the case. 2 people were brutally killed.
A mostly white jury found Simpson liable, ordering him to pay $33.5 million to the families of the murder victims in 1997.
Do you remember where you were when you heard about these crimes? Let us know in the comments below.
There are not words to describe just how bad this was.